All right, everyone. So we are live. So welcome back. So we are back here again for MISA. So we're week 10 in the semester, week 9 for MISA. So we appreciate all of you joining us tonight. So last week we had our company information session with ADT. So hopefully you were able to join us with that. If not, we do have the recording up on the MISA website. So feel free and watch that if you didn't get a chance. So tonight we have going to our MISA general meetings. We have our sort of second annual MISA Tech Talk. So last semester in the spring was the first time we decided to do this MISA Tech Talk, and it was really just out of interest from the students that they wanted to just have something where we could kind of have some experts from the field come out and talk a little bit about some areas of technology that relates to their specialty. So that's kind of what we have tonight. So tonight we have, like I said, some awesome special guests coming to speak. For those of you that aren't familiar with Source Inc., you'll get some a little bit info about the company and obviously the solutions they provide. But we're excited to have the two presenters here tonight. So one of the presenters is actually one of our FAU MIS alums, and he's also a MISA premium member. So we're happy to have him as well. So without any further ado, can we have a nice virtual warm MISA round of applause for our two guest speakers from Source Inc., Mark and James.
All right, thank you. I'll just go ahead and kick it off. Thank you for the introduction and the time. Thank you everyone for your time this evening. So kind of how I want to shape this is being alumni from FAU in this program, there's a lot of difference between what you read in the textbooks and practical application, right? The way technology exponentially J-curves, by the time that it's printed, just like by the time you buy a computer or a phone, it's out of date. And stuff is just crazy fast in the environment that we're in. And one thing that is interesting, my previous history, I have 9 years of wireless experience, so I'm already very familiar with this industry, but I just want to kind of open everyone's eyes to how much there is to do with LTE. And kind of before I start this, I want, when you think about the trains, you think about every bus, you think about every fire police vehicle that's out there, traffic light, ATMs, soda machines, digital signage, all those are connected to the network. You have to have hardware to connect them because a lot of companies want to keep them off their network because they don't want the exposure or point of fail or limit the security that they have on their infrastructure. So I'll start out with introducing who we are, what we do, cover some solutions. Please, if you have any questions, just interject. So for about almost 20 years now, we've really specialized in IoT and anything that really has to do with the transmission of data. But it just doesn't come from the manufacturing side. It also comes from Verizon. We're an elite Verizon partner. So all of our equipment is carrier agnostic for the most part. That's like, and just as a heads up, everything I say is a 95% rule. So there is equipment that is specific to AT&T or T-Mobile or Verizon, but for the most part, all the solutions are carrier agnostic. But when you look at like the hardware manufacturers, we've been partner of the year 4 out of the last 6 years with Cradlepoint, Samsung partner, Peplink, Sierra, Digi, InHand. All these are routers and tablet manufacturers. James. So here are some of the solutions that I picked out, and James is our CIO. So I'm going to turn it over to him to cover the solutions. And please interject if you have any questions.
Appreciate that, Mark. Hey, nice to virtually be here with everyone this evening. James Butler, Chief Information Officer at Verizon. Been in the industry for over 20 years myself. The majority of that was spent at Verizon. Been at Source for about the last 2.5 years. We're going to jump right into what we hear of in the industry as 5G, right? What are the carriers doing? How does that work? Because when you hear 5G, not all 5G is the same. First and foremost, this is a really good visual representation of what we would in the industry call true 5G, which is millimeter wave. Some carriers refer to it as ultra wideband service. This is where you jump up into the frequency range. This is a whole new level set of technology. It takes a very special set of hardware and network applications to put this together to actually function. This isn't something that you carry in your pocket for the most part. Some of the newer flagship phones that you've seen out, such as like the Samsung devices, the Apple, some of them can do ultra wideband service, but it's not all 5G is bred the same. So in this case here, these are going to be more of your point-to-point systems. This has to be mounted on the outside of a facility. This can do 5 gigabits plus on the downlink, and they're pushing into the 1 and 2 gig up on the uplink. So extremely fast over-the-air service, but very short service coverage area off of the E node, or what they refer to as the tower. When you move into some of the newer technology of what they're calling mid-band or sub-6, this is where you'll learn about categories of LTE chipsets and using what's known as these new N bands to basically add what's known as carrier aggregation, using multiple RF links up to the tower and then opening up a 4th or 5th channel to get this high capacity, high bandwidth lane opened up. In this case here, these are capable of up to 2.5 gigabit. So that's really extremely fast when we talk about, standard links, but now offering in-building penetration, where previously on the slide I just showed you ultra wideband service, no in-building penetration is outside site to site. That's why you're going to see these adapters outside, where these devices can actually live indoors. When we move into what's known as the low band, this is your traditional LTE, but you're seeing the carriers refer to this as LTE evolution, or 5G evolution, or 5G DSS. Each carrier's kind of got their own spin as to what they're calling this flavor of 5G, but us that's been in the industry for many years refer to this as carrier aggregation. What that is your standard LTE. Think about it as bonding multiple RF links. So now I've got dedicated RF lanes for downlinks. I've got dedicated RF links for the uplink. So I'm creating multiple paths up to the tower, but now I can get extremely far from the tower with good building and good in-building penetration and long distance off the E node. Maximum throughput in this technology is 1.2 gigabits. So you can still see that you can get gigabit service and not be on 5G technology, even though it's a flavor of it. So this is kind of a good visual representation now that we understand those 3 different types. You got your outdoor adapters, you got your capacity layer there, where you've got ruggedized devices that can be in mobile environments, such as Mark had talked about, maybe buses, transit vans, things like that, providing free Wi-Fi when you're in an Uber. Or you got fixed wireless applications, but you don't want to run an outdoor unit. And then in your coverage layer, this is where things such as traffic lights, IoT devices, the buzzwords we hear, machine to machine, that's where these devices live. So understanding the customer's application, understanding their bandwidth needs, and understanding what in our industry we refer to as environmental specs, where's this device going to live, helps right size hardware for that customer's application, because not all of these devices are built equally. They all have their own purpose in the industry. Source Inc. is what you would refer to as an elite partner of Verizon Wireless. We solely work with Verizon for the majority of the point. So we work with their legal, we work with their marketing team. We understand from their network team what the capabilities are. So then that helps us as a company to come up with promotions. So why we're in the elite program and how we're in our existence is when you walk into a Verizon store, for example, everything that you see in that store is what Verizon inventory and houses within their own environment. So their business sales reps, all they have access to is what you see in those stores. When it comes to commercialized hardware, there's 4 companies in the country that are at an elite level with Verizon. There's tens of thousands of devices that are certified for use on their network. It's just they don't inventory them, they don't stock them, and they're not the technical experts on them. They come to companies like us to be that that supply channel and that expert around this type of hardware. So we work with them. You can see here right now in the LTE world at Verizon, what they're really focused on is business internet plans. These are dedicated, ISP circuits. They've kind of moved away from, hey, you can only use 2 gigs or 5 gigs. with these new plans. So now they're acting more as a traditional internet provider and charging by how much bandwidth you're allowed versus how much total utilization you have. So in this case here, we've worked to bring a free offer to the table. This is great for small applications such as ATMs, PLC systems, SCADA data, traffic controllers, things that are lower bandwidth utilization, maybe a single person working from home on a laptop or a desktop. Great option there. And then as you move up in the stack, this is where you learn about LTE categories. So it starts down in a narrow band, and then it moves into Cat 1, Cat 4, Cat 6, Cat 12, Cat 18, 20, 22, and so on. And it's just like buying a car, right? A Ferrari costs a whole lot more than a Prius, but a Ferrari is a whole lot faster. Prius is still going to get you to the finish line, just as not as fast as that Ferrari. But then you've also got semis to think about. Hey, it's slower, but I can carry a lot of payload. So, that's going to be your industrial routers to where, hey, I don't need to go super fast, but I need to have a lot of users on this network. So again, all those things go into consideration. But when we get into brick and mortars, right, the wireless technology opens up a whole nother door and a way of thinking that, this doesn't apply just to buildings or fixed wireless access. This also goes into the mobility space. So we worked with them closely to provide options for bandwidth, utilization requirements on the customer's end, but right sizing that hardware, making it easy to understand and easy to sell for their sales reps, and easy for a customer to understand that, hey, I'm buying, a 50 meg plan. Okay, here's two great options for routers that are going to work in my mobile environment, such as semis, buses, passenger vans, fleets, things, etc. So really, being in this industry is more than just understanding technology. It's understanding marketing. It's understanding utilization rates. It's understanding your true industry as a whole, but not being so segmented into a specific vertical. You've got to apply it to all and understand what the industry demands are or the market demands. But to continue that conversation, we really help focus in on 5G products. This is a great example of kind of understanding what those outdoor adapters look like in the bottom left-hand corner. You got those sub-6 adapters right there in the middle where they can sit inside on your IT rack and be that secondary ISP path or an SD-WAN environments for active sessions. Or you got those dedicated 5G links that can be used in ruggedized environments or mobile industries. Source Inc., as we mentioned, all those routers, then there's other considerations to have when we look at the federal government space or our first responders. They have dedicated sections carved out in the network. AT&T, you'll hear that as FirstNet. Verizon has a dedicated section of their network called Frontline. What they do is they use a networking topology called ruthless preemption, meaning that in times of capacity, the QoS engine is smart enough to say, hey, little Billy over here scrolling away on TikToks, killing a bunch of bandwidth, and I need to get some data sessions online. They're going to boot little Billy off the network and allow these first responders on. So using that type of codec system on the back, being registered on the network in certain ways does enhance or provide certain functions and features outside of just what we would see as traditional bandwidth control or utilization rates on the network. So Source Inc. works with the carrier closely. We have one of the very first, this is the first Frontline certified piece of hardware capable on the Verizon network. This is an all-in-one, basically a Pelican case, but it's got everything that customer would need, from the router, the battery, it's got Wi-Fi, it's got Bluetooth, it's got Ethernet, and it's a grab-and-go waterproof case to where that way it can survive in basically any element or environment that you throw it in. Moving on, we have a lot of different office-in-the-box offerings. One of the biggest things that's happening in the communications industry right now is the replacement of POTS lines. I don't know the average age for everybody on the call, but I can tell you when I was younger, we definitely had a home phone. I don't have one today, so I don't know why my parents still hold on to theirs, but they do. But for the majority of us, we just walk around with cell phones. Well, the FCC has granted approval for the landline carriers to start decommissioning those networks. The best way I can relate to it that anyone can understand is there used to be, or it still is, but it's going to go away shortly, is a 3G network. And the carriers, just as technology evolved, they get permission to start decommissioning or turn off these networks. And the subscribers that are on those networks have to be given alternatives, or they're going to lose their service. And it's just the evolution of technology, right? You can't build a network and support it indefinitely, because sometimes you need that RF range back, or you need that copper just to go away because it's costly to maintain. So that's what's happening in the landline world. We're working closely with Verizon. Obviously, Verizon is more than just your cell phones. They, have a large national presence for landline customers, of coming in and offering solutions that can now utilize wireless technology, but support natively copper networks. So things like fire alarms, dial-up modems, security panels, elevator phones. I'm sure if you've maybe have some on your campus, emergency call stations. Those things run off of traditional telephone lines. So now we can bring a device like this in where they would call the DMARC or the 66 block, where the twisted pairs come in, where the actual landline companies drop in the circuits in the facility. We disconnect that, and then we bring in appliances like this, pin down onto where those would terminate, and still provide that dial tone. It's no difference in service. It's just, instead of leaving the building on a copper network or a hardwired network, it's now going over LTE. So great options for customers. You can see here, it's as little as $299, $19.99 a month. So very affordable rates. But in this case here, you solve a customer's problem for $300. And in many cases, for them to get permits and to actually pull physical cable from the street into a facility, sometimes that's $15,000, $30,000 to pull fiber. So it makes a whole lot more sense for them just to buy something like this, keep their traditional copper network up and running inside the facility, versus a rip and replace, where now they've got to get fiber circuits pulled in, and then they got to find alternatives. Maybe it's a VoIP application, or retrofit into some type of FFX or FSO type of environment that can be supported over traditional IP networks. Outside of that, there's other things, for anybody that's tech savvy on the call, IoT, M2M, that's a lot of buzzwords that you hear in the industry. We kind of take it for granted on our source side, because we understand it. And really, it's our job every day to go out and educate not only the carrier sales reps, but also customers as to what those mean, and keep them up to date. And then what we did here is we built a platform for software to kind of make that, we'll say, a little more agile and a little easier to understand, but simplify the whole process. Previously, if you wanted to monitor something, right, you would have to get a sensor, and then that sensor manufacturer had their own platform. Maybe I was monitoring temperature. Now I want to monitor humidity. Well, now I got to go get a humidity sensor, and now I'm using another piece of software. It was very kludgy. So what we wanted to do was bring it all into one single pane of glass, have a single dashboard to see all these sensors, one piece of software to manage all these. So we got about 550 sensors in the platform that we built. It uses a technology called LoRa. If you don't know much about LoRa, read up on it. It's definitely an up and coming technology. You can get extremely long range out of it. Not a whole lot of bandwidth, but it's great for sensors and simple packet data, and then traversing that back out through LTE. So kind of think about it kind of like your home Wi-Fi router. You can plug your Wi-Fi router in, but you still need a cable modem or something to get that device online. So it's always going to be that two parts of you got the PAN or the personal area network, or in this case here, a LAN, and then you've got your wireless access network or your WAN that traverses all that data back out.
James.
Yep. Go ahead.
When you have the lab in your house and you were testing LoRa, what range did you receive off the sensor?
Yeah, so we had put together basically a PERS device, or personal emergency response system. I actually drove down the road to pick up a pizza. It was a little over a mile away from my house, clicked the button, and it still worked. On LoRa technology, if I move that router outside, you can get miles out of it. I mean, 3, 4, 5 miles, no issue. Depending on the sensor getting back. But in my case, it was over a mile. And when I looked at the RF logs, I was sitting at about neg 88. I probably could have driven another mile and still clicked that button and it worked. So it's like Wi-Fi on steroids. It's a really good question there. You can see here, we're kind of adapting a lot of newer technology, doing that augmented reality approach, data overlays. So that way customers can see their environment and see that data overlay and corresponding to what unit that they're monitoring or measuring. What we do is, kind of make it simple for everybody. We follow legislation. Legislation determines when and what businesses have to do. So in this case here, this is called FSMA 2020 is how they say it, but really it's the FSMA. Food Safety Modernization Act. What changed there is anybody who has a food and beverage license now has to have temperature taking practices inside their restaurant to ensure the safety of the food. Before, it used to just be distributors and grocery stores. Now anybody that's serving food is now a part of that safety supply chain. So we follow that type of legislation and figure out how can technology solve these things that people are forced into through mandates or laws. And then you come to the table with a solution and something that's extremely easy to put in, but wireless technology solves that for them. We go back from data safety. Obviously, this is all in an encrypted hosted environment. The data is stored for the life of that customer. So that way, in these type of situations, anytime they're audited, that data is always available. So if they went back 3 years and had a certain range that they were getting audited, they can rest assured that that data is getting, or it's going to be on their platform. One of the other biggest things that's happening in the industry is digital signage. COVID definitely, enhanced this need for customers because you weren't visiting inside their four walls. So all those signs that you typically see in a store, they didn't have that way to display it. So now a lot of customers are turning their storefronts into basically billboards to one, not only just, promote safe health practices while inside their business and being a patron of that company, but also to promote and to gather attention to their storefront to get you in there. Obviously, you see it in airports, you see it at bus stops. Smart cities are adopting digital signage at a faster rate. Even companies are doing it as welcome screens when you come into their facility. It can be simple appliances like this. You got an all-in-one LTE modem. It's got a digital media player, and it just sits and resides on the back of the panel. So that way you can retrofit any panel into now a digital signage. So essentially like your home television, you can now make it a billboard if you want. You've got a network and then you got a piece of software. And if that's the one thing I'll give you as an acronym that's just, I think stuck with me throughout my career, we as humans, we're made up of DNA. And you see that up there in the left-hand corner, digital signage DNA. Every solution is made up of DNA. And when we look at that, there's always got to be a device, there's always got to be a network, and there's always got to be an application. If you're missing one of those three, you don't have a living, breathing solution. You've got something that's missing, and you always got to solve for that piece. So hopefully that's one good takeaway you can take from this call. It's always stuck with me, but DNA, we as humans are made up that way. So are solutions. When we look at, digital signage, moving into that era of HTML5, live streaming capabilities. So that way, in the event of an emergency, yes, it's broadcasting, I don't know, Mrs. Jones muffin special for the week. But if there was, a tornado or breaking news, you can interrupt these digital signs to, provide, people in that area that information. You've got proof of play reporting. So people that want to turn this into a revenue stream for their company now have the tools at their fingertips to be able to sell ad space within there. The device itself, Android adds a lot of flexibility to be able to customize the OS at any point in time for a customer or just support for more features and functionality. As a whole, you've got your key verticals that really, we'll say focus on digital signage. That's going to be your retail companies, your manufacturing, healthcare, and transportation. But outside of that, it's really anybody. You'll see them more now, especially in the restaurant industry as well. They're turning the menu boards into digital signs. So that way they're kind of more flashy. They may have some video here and there. So that way, if they need to do a price change, they can click one button and do it across an entire industry. They don't have to go in and print new boards for every brick and mortar. Use cases outside of that, data-driven content. We're seeing API and URL hooks into data centers, more and more prevalent this day and age because people want real-time information, obviously. And then interactive kiosks. So we're seeing that as well. So, as maybe, things evolve, we have online shopping, curbside pickup. I don't even have to go into the store now. They could essentially be shut down, have an interactive kiosk outside. I can see all the inventory and schedule right there at the door. They could drop it out. I don't even need to walk in. So a lot of different use cases for digital signage. What we're seeing more now is contact tracing with COVID-19, and it has to do with visitors as people are opening up, trying to maintain safety records and logs, but also enhance their capabilities of people coming and going from their facility. So We're talking about smart check-in, smart checkout system, temperature taking practices. So that way, when somebody comes in, hey, James Butler, yep, I'm here to see John Doe. Let me take, the kiosk is taking my temperature. Yep, he's within a safe range on his, internal temperature. I'm going to go ahead and let John know that James is in the lobby and we've already safely checked him in and he most likely doesn't have COVID-19 or is not running a fever. John approves me. The system is going to go ahead and automatically print out my visitor badge. I just go ahead and place it on, and then John meets me in the lobby or opens up the door and lets me in. So a lot of different ways that you just see technology evolving. And it's way more when we think about like the word Verizon, most people think, oh, my cell phone. It is way, way more than that. Down to, gunshot detection units, video surveillance, anything that, basically requires a data connection. It's not that we need to pull Cat 5 or Cat 6 somewhere anymore. We basically plug it in. Or it's running on batteries and it's up and running. So the days of hardwiring everything are kind of by the wayside. This is more the future. Fun fact, in 2018, no, I take that back, 2016, for the first time in history, mobile devices, so, handhelds, phones, tablets, things like that, surpassed desktop traffic across the entire internet. So, think about that. When you go home at night, and you're using your device to shop or, for social media content and engagement, you're not pulling out a laptop or going into your office and firing up the old desktop anymore. You're grabbing your phone or your tablet and you're hanging back on the couch. So you can see that that's where the industry is going. People are adopting at a faster rate. And for the most part, everybody walking around, you've got about 3 connections that you're making to the network. You got your smartwatch. If it's LTE embedded, you got your smartphone, and then you got your tablet in most cases. And in some cases, you may have an embedded tablet. So consumers are consuming at a higher rate more than ever. But with that, that kind of goes over the things I wanted to cover with you this evening, kind of open up your eyes on how technology is being used in wireless applications, and, kind of what Source does. But I'll pass it back to Mark to kind of go over the back office kind of things that Source does. And, again, thank you so much for your time this evening and allowing me to come on here and present these solutions to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, James. So one of the important things is, you're not just buying a box, but really getting the entire solution. And so I'll use an example. I cover the Southeast, so Florida, the Southeast, the islands, and then I also cover Southern California and Hawaii. So out in Hawaii, there's a farm that they have a water supply and people are tampering with it. So they have to have a remote camera system that uses LTE and solar shields. So it'd be one thing to buy that, individual components and put them together yourself, which no one really has the expertise to do that, or you utilize a company like Source that can do that for you. So when we ship you the box, all that's left is putting the whole pole in the ground and then mounting the box. So we do kitting and staging, designing, setup, support, replacement, CapEx versus OpEx. So literally anything that you need from start to finish. Sometimes it seems like a science project, but when you think about, I've got a customer that does vaporization and liquefaction of natural gas to move it across the country. We created a kit to help monitor the data for them to keep track of where the natural gas is. So when you think about, jobs and what industry, LTE is definitely a way of the future. And when you think about, there are 3 big carriers, then you have several smaller ones like US Cellular, Cricket, some smaller mom and pops. There is definitely an industry. So if you can grasp this and actually run with it, it really will open your job opportunities. If you can understand this and really see the big picture of LTE, 5G, and how it works into everything. And I think that's the last slide, right, James?
Yeah, other than that, it's really just thank you. I appreciate the ability to come on here and kind of lend our industry experience and our technical expertise around the industry. So if there's any questions, we're happy to take those at any point in time. If you had any questions around some of the solutions or just general questions at all.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark. James, that was great. I know I was intrigued by all of that, because I think for a lot of us, we're not in that space. And so it's really interesting to be able to see all the different solutions and all the problems that companies like Source Inc. is faced with, and how they have to provide solutions for a variety of different clients. So Really cool. So what we could do, like you said, we'll turn it over to Q&A. So if you have any questions for either Mark or James, you can throw it in the chat, or you can pop on your mic, whatever works best for you.